Welcome to the spagirlspodcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. And we have the delightful Aidy Award with us today.
Yay.
Welcome. Welcome. We're fangirling, aren't we, Trudy? Because we met up with Aidy at RAM just last month. It feels like years ago, but yeah.
Yes, I didn't go to RAM, okay, if you're asking.
Don't start.
I didn't go.
Next time.
Yeah, it was so good.
It was so good.
Wendy.
Spin on that, Amy.
Yeah, thanks for that.
We had the best time, didn't we?
Yeah.
Isn't that an awesome conference that Wendy missed
It was
out
super
on?
fun. You should have been there.
Thanks so much, Amy. Thanks.
So we've got Amy on the show with us today to talk about a new series and her new pen name that she's just launched or a year ago launched and has been super successful. I'm going to read out the bio and then we're going to get right into the interview. So Aidy Award is a USA Today best-selling author and TikTok sensation. She writes curvy girl romance about real love, dirty fun, with happy ever afters because every woman deserves great sex and even better romance, no matter her size, shape, or what the scale says. Awesome. I love that.
Love that too.
Okay.
Yep.
Very, very true. So you've got these two pen names that I know about. So maybe there's more secret ones, but the two main ones. And one is Aidy Award, which I think is alien romance and kind of shifter
paranormal, mostly shifters. Yeah.
Mostly shifters. Yeah. I just saw that you like stormtroopers as one of your
I do love stormtroopers.
And I thought that maybe
Who doesn't though, right?
Right? Who doesn't?
Stormtroopers.
I mean, when you hit Disney World and those stormtroopers are coming at you, you like stormtroopers.
You're like,
Okay.
You're like, whoa.
It's something about that man in uniform, but with a mask on.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought
See?
about that. So anyway, that's Aidy, and Aidy's been doing very well over the last 10 years. And then last year, you decided to create Amy, who Amy is contemporary romance. Would you call it that?
Yeah,
Rom-com
Amy's contemporary rom-coms, and 80s still funny-ish, but shifters.
Yeah,
mostly dragons, werewolves.
Yeah. And Amy has just taken off. Amy is doing awesomely well. So, but first of all, let's get started. Let's talk about how you got into writing and self-publishing, and then we'll talk about Amy.
So I've lived all over the world because I used to teach English as a foreign language. And when I was teaching in Vietnam, I honestly just got bored because I had a lot of time off during the week. And so I have an English degree, not that that's really done anything, but except that I love to read. That's really why I ended up with a degree in English, because it was really just reading a lot. But I'd gotten out of it after university. And when I was in Vietnam and I had all this extra time on my hand, I just picked up reading again, just as a hobby. But there's not, we have different copyright laws than the rest of us. So there weren't a lot of bookstores, and this was before ebooks. And so I could only get whatever was available at like the backpacker bookstores, like whatever the people left when they traveled through. And that tends to be a lot of romance. And my mom had been a big romance reader, but I really was, kind of snobby about classics and whatever, English literature degree, right? Yeah. But that was what was available to read. And so I really fell in love with romance in general. And then because I had so much time on my hands, I was like, I think I could write a romance. And so I started writing. And I'm a jump in with both feet kind of a person. So that same summer, I joined RWA and went to the conference. I flew in from Vietnam to go to the conference in Disney World. In Orlando, and just jumped in with both feet. And then a couple of years later, I moved home and I said to my family, can I live in your basement for a year and see if I can make this writing thing happen? Not knowing that a year is not really enough time to make this writing thing happen, but they're very kind and allowed me to do that. And I think I published my first book probably 4 years later. I did the whole query to agents and editors and that whole route before. And then I was like, what's this self-publishing thing? I will just try it for funsies. And I did, and that book did really well. That was in 2014, which was the Gold Rush days. So basically, you could write a cookbook about poo back then and sell pretty well.
Amen. That's
Don't do
true.
that. Don't do that anymore.
Right. I have not done that, but I feel
I
like
was
you
going to
could
say,
have
have you?
No, I wrote an erotic romance about a chubby girl, which was not something that I had seen or read. There just weren't very many books about girls who looked like me in romance, or if they were in it, they were the fat, funny friend, or the sidekick, or the villain. And so I wanted to see myself represented in fiction. And so I published that book, and I basically haven't looked back since.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Amazing story.
So you were publishing successfully as Aidy, and they were the books that you were writing. So we've got all these amazing wolf shifters and dragon shifters and all the paranormal romance books. And then something must have changed at some point. What happened?
I didn't really understand what had changed until I recently took a course with the fabulous Becca Syme about business phases. And I mean, I knew what was going on with me. Essentially, like, the Aidy business was going great. Like, I published somewhere in between 6 to 10 books a year. They always were well received. I was making a good enough money that this is my full-time job. And I was bored. And it wasn't because I didn't love the stories. I still absolutely love my wolf shifter world and my dragon world. I was just bored with the business. And after having taken this really fabulous business seminar with Becca Syme, I've learned that I was at, like, the phase in your business where it just kind of runs. Like, you don't have to do as much work for it anymore. And part of that is the fun for me. And so I had always wanted to, even though I was writing dragon shifters and werewolves and stuff like that, I have always wanted to have a football player as a hero. I don't know why, I just do. Like, my very first manuscript, like the one that's under the bed that will never see the light of day, was a football player who owned a turkey ranch. And
of course he does. Like, why wouldn't he?
Of course, as one does, right? And the premise was he was a single dad, as one is in a romance, and his kids sign him up for an app where you when you're matched, you're automatically married, and that person just moves in with you.
Wow.
Like fun to me, right? So, and then my heroine was a baker who lived in New York, and she had to move to the middle of Oklahoma, and it's a whole thing. But football player, it's always been the love of my writing career to write a football player. And so I decided, I'm bored with shifters right now. I love them, but I'm bored with them. Let's pull out the football player idea again and see what happens. And I also decided at that point it needed a new pen name, because while my shifter people would probably read a contemporary romance, a lot of contemporary readers don't read a lot of paranormal romance. And so I thought, let's give it a whole shot all on its own, to do the contemporary in its own pen name, and launched a whole new pen name, and it went bananas.
Wow.
Sure.
When was that? What year was that?
That was last year.
That was last year.
Last year. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the first book is The Cock Down the Block. And it's okay because the cock is a rooster.
It's a rooster, people.
It's all good, people. It's
fine.
Everyone take a breath. The Cock Down the Block is a rooster.
Very cheeky titles.
Yeah, they're very cheeky.
The cock-a-doodle-doo down the block. Yeah.
And so I want to hear about what you did. So when you were approaching the series, you knew that it wanted to be a footballer. What else? Like, there were other things that you decided that you were going to start doing. Is that right?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do rom-com, and I really leaned into that. I am an Enneagram 7. If anybody is interested in Enneagram information, it's a personality typing thing, right? And Enneagram 7s are the have fun people. They're the party girls, the go out and make friends with everybody people. And I felt like a 7 would write rom-com because it's the go have fun. And even though there were lots of other areas in romance that are super popular, like dark romance, I knew that wasn't for me because I'm the positive fluffy girl. So I started with that. I started leaning into the strengths of what I knew how to do after 10 years of publishing, to create this new series. And so I knew I wanted to do rom-com. I knew I wanted to do a footballer, and obviously I'm going to do Curvy Girls forever and ever. I'm going to do Curvy Girls. And so it started from there. But also because I have all of this experience and I love to learn new things all of the time. The biggest thing that I did for this series was I was very, very intentional about setting up the premise of the world, not just the plot for the book. Like I love me some plotting, but really I'm a discovery writer, so I can only plot so far before I end up changing it anyway. But the premise for the world was really important to me, to set it up that it could be something that both that I loved, that could be the world / the book of my heart, but that could also be the book of the heart of my readers. And that is where I turned to all of the information that I have learned from Jennifer Lynn Barnes over the years. If you're not familiar with her, there's lots of good stuff on the internet, including a TED Talk from her about the psychology of fiction. And I've attended a couple of different classes with her via RWA and RAM over the years. And so I pulled out my notes for those. I listened to her psychology of fiction talk from RWA about 500 times in a row. And I pulled out the basics of what she was telling us about. She calls them universal pleasures. And I looked at those and found like 7 categories of what these universal pleasures entailed. And then I said, okay, so what can I do in my series, in my world, to set it up so that this psychology of universal pleasures is already baked into the world. And I sat down with each of them and said, okay, for this, I'm going to do this, for this, I'm going to do this, and for this, I'm going to do this. So I was very intentional about setting that part of it up. And so I think that is a lot of why, because the psychology of fiction is also, the pleasures are things that are pleasurable to everybody, but you have to find the ones that like really tickle your fancy, right? And so that's how it became the book of my heart, but also the book of my reader's heart at the same time.
And that's really cool. And I saw Jennifer Lynn Barnes at RAM. We all did as well. Yeah. And I listened to an interview
I didn't.
about.
Yeah, you did.
You did. No, you did. This is
2019.
Oh,
okay, that RAM.
This is not a moment for you to get jealous.
That was years ago.
Yeah, you're fine.
You're included now.
You're included.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay.
So, but I saw a recent interview, or maybe not recent. I recently saw another interview with Jennifer, and she talked about, because she's got this series, The Inheritance Games, and so she has always been, doing okay as a traditional author. She had books published. She had a good career. And then she sat down and said, I've been talking about all these things. She's a university professor studying the psychology of fiction. And she used all of the stuff that she had been researching all these years, exactly what you did with your books. And then she created the Inheritance Games, and that series is just exploded. And it's those same things that we're going to talk about today, same things that you've used, but same things that as readers we love having, so or love reading about. So I thought that was really cool. So can we talk about the 7 things that you and actually what specifically you did?
Yeah, for sure. So the 7 categories, I'll just go through them sort of one by one and say, here's how I built it in. So the first category, if you're a romance writer, is super easy for us because the first category is sex. That one's easy peasy. Although even if you write romances that are closed door, you can still include this idea. In fact, I was talking to a friend who writes very sweet historical romances. They don't even do the kissing in her books. And she's like, I don't, how can I incorporate this? And I said, what if you did like a dance scene where they do dancing? Because that was really, the flirting of the time. And that's as close as you're going to get to sex. But you could include that as your idea of sex in the book. So that one, for romance authors, that one's easy peasy. I mean, I got plenty of spicy times in my books, so that one's easy. The next one is wealth and resources. So this is why billionaires are popular, because they're wealthy, even though, none of us actually wants to be with a real billionaire because they're not nice people. But
arrogant,
in books, we absolutely do. And the other caveat to this is that you don't have to show these things in a positive light. There's plenty of books out there that are showing, the bad side of wealth or resources or whatever it is that we're talking about. There's a lot of them that show the negative sides of them as well, and that's just as intriguing to us. And for the wealth and resources, it doesn't have to just be wealth. Resources are really important too. It doesn't just have to be money. It's who's got the thing that is important in that society. I like to compare this into, like, if you're going to do like a small town romance, a lot of times the resource is gossip. So who's got the gossip in your town? In the way that I did it in my book is I decided my family were going to be filled with pro footballers. So they obviously have good money because they are getting paid professionally to play sports. So that was the easy way to build that into my world for me. And then, hold on, I gotta grab my notebook because I know what I did, but I can't remember what the 7 topics are. Hold, please.
I can tell.
So good, right? I mean, you just don't think about, like, I just sit down to write. That's what I've always done.
Yes,
but
same.
to think about it, actually, what the baking in part makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Being more intentional with what you're trying to convey.
Oh, she's back.
I've got that too, also.
Yeah, that's exactly the one.
I think I do.
That is exactly the one right there.
And you haven't shared it with me. Okay,
No,
fine.
I don't like Wendy, so
Harsh.
It was in the RAM notes from my presentation that I did at RAM. So the next one, this is one of my favorite ones. I can't believe I forgot this one. The next category is competition, which I hadn't really ever thought of before Jennifer talked to us about this, but we love competition. Look how big sports are across the world. And so again, easy peasy for me to build this into my world. My heroes are professional sports players. But I wanted something a little bit more than that. And part of that was because I had already used it for my wealth and resources category. So what I decided to do, and I a little bit stole this idea from Julia Quinn, I wanted my family to play games together. So I created in the story, I call it Kingman Family Game Night, and they all get together as a family and they play like Monopoly, but it's super competitive amongst all of them. Right. And I found that this is one of the favorite chapters of my readers in every single book. They want to know, they can't wait for Kingman Family Game Night chapter, even though like it has nothing, not nothing, but it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the romance, except that I bring my heroines to Kingman Family Game Night and they get to experience it for the first time and see how wild and crazy and competitive family is. They always have a big argument over, they have the lucky pillow that mom embroidered years ago. And whoever has the lucky pillow obviously is going to win the game. And so they always have a battle for it at the beginning of the night. Yeah. And so fun competition, things like that. Yeah. It doesn't, what I built into this series.
Sorry to interrupt you. That shows that it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Like it doesn't have to be a big competition. It doesn't have to be like the Hunger Games or something. It can just be a little fun thing.
It actually reminds me of the croquet in Bridgerton's.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I said I was watching Bridgerton's, and I read the whole series years ago, but I was watching Bridgerton's and I was like, oh, look, I forgot that they play croquet and they play it super competitive.
And there's a lucky color. There's a lucky color.
Yes, exactly. Right.
You know?
Yeah. So I definitely borrowed the idea of some sort of family gaming competitively from reading the Bridgertons.
I love it.
And it works out so well. The next category is beauty. And this one was really important to me in my series specifically because plus size women don't feel beautiful a lot of the times. And it's, fat phobia is very rampant in our general society. And so I wanted to make sure that what I was doing with this was making the plus size heroines in the book feel beautiful in some way, not just I'm putting on it. And it absolutely works with like a makeover scene. I did that in book 3 in the series. Remember, it's a cat. is The Pussy Next Door, and there's a makeover scene in that where she goes and she gets a dress, and her friends help her pick it out. And so that is a beauty scene, but I wanted to very specifically make sure that my heroes talked about how beautiful the heroines were to them in different ways. And that's, for the most part, again, easy to do for romance authors.
Yeah.
The next category is really similar to wealth and resources, but it's different, and it's power and status. So again, this can go back to your, if you were like writing a small town romance, who's got the status in the town, who's got the power in the town. Like maybe it's the mayor who has the status, but maybe the power really is, you know, the little old biddy at the salon who knows what's going on in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
But the way that I did it in my book, for me, and I wanted to make a way that these people were powerful without being not nice about it. I wanted it to be inherent in who they were already. So again, it goes back again to sports, professional sports players. But I decided the whole family were all going to be professional sports players. And as a family, so that I'm like, okay, so it's sort of like the royal family, but it's the royal family of football. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so what can I call a royal family of football? Because originally I had started it out in my mind, my family's name, they were the Carters. I don't know why, that just came to me. But then when I was thinking about these categories, I changed it. And my family's last name is the Kingmans, because kings are powerful. Kings have status. So the Kingman royal family of football, just in the name, it's already built in. Like I don't have to say that much more, except that so now I've had, for the first 4 books, all of the brothers all play for the same football team, and so it's a very powerful family now, as people recognize them. So again, but it's just a little teeny tiny thing. Like I didn't plan a whole series about royalty or somebody who is very powerful. I named them the Kingmans, because you already know kings are powerful.
And even when you say that, like when you say like the name, like when you were talking about the Kingman family, like immediately my ear was caught. I was kind of like, oh, the Kingmans, you know, there's something so simple.
So much better than the Carters. Like I'm sure Carters are lovely people, but they're not the Kingmans.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Yeah. The next category is my favorite of them all. It's danger that can actually hurt you.
That
cannot actually hurt you.
Yeah.
And the reason this is I actually think this is the rise of dark romance in the past 5-ish years, because dark romance for so many of our readers is danger, kidnapping and extortion and the mafia, and that can actually hurt us.
Yeah.
Because we're safe in our little fictional world, right? Part of the way that I love this one is Jennifer tells a story about a science experiment called the Rickety Bridge. And in this experiment, and this is real, you can like go Google the Rickety Bridge if you want to go deeper into the science of it. I'm just going to give you the highlights. The basics of the Rickety Bridge is the scientists take some, probably college students, because it's probably in college, right? To like say like a national forest or something like that, somewhere out in the woods, not like dark and scary out in the woods, but just out into the woods, where there is a bridge that they're going to cross. And at the front of the bridge, they say, okay, when you get to the other side of the bridge, be careful, the bridge is a little bit rickety. When you get to the other side of the bridge, there's going to be somebody who's going to hand you a survey that we would like you to fill out about your experience crossing the bridge. And they cross the bridge and it is rickety. It's like, oh no, I could maybe fall off the bridge. And then when you get to the other side, this gentleman hands you your piece of paper, your survey to fill out. The scientists don't care what's on the survey. They were not measuring how scared you were of the rickety bridge. They wanted to know, how attracted were you to the guy at the other end of the bridge? Because I know, isn't it delicious?
Yeah.
Because danger, increased heart rate, breathing, flushed skin are the same things that happen during arousal. So when the two things happen, we sometimes can't differentiate, is this arousal or is this danger? And they're equally as fun for our brain.
Wow.
danger that can't actually hurt us, danger that's not actually dangerous.
That's
But
so cool.
I was writing a rom-com. I'm like, how am I going to put nobody's going to get kidnapped in my rom-com? There's no mafia, I promise. These are really nice people. I'm writing cinnamon roll heroes. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do a thing. And this came from, again, Jennifer told us this story during her one of her presentations, where she talks about, remember Twilight? Are you there? Back at Twilight with me. In the very first book and / movie, Bella is at school and the day is over and she's going back out to her car in the parking lot, and it's slippery outside, and a car comes roaring through the parking lot and it's gonna probably run directly into her and it would smash her and kill her. And Edward jumps in front of the car and saves her. So Bella was just in danger that didn't actually hurt her. So it's this real connection scene for us, the readers, between Bella and Edward. How can I do that? So at the beginning of every single one of my books, my heroes somehow do something to rescue my hero's pet from some sort of danger. So in the very first book, the meet cute opening scene is my heroine Trixie has a pet rooster who's a little bit naughty, and he's trucking down the middle of the street in their very suburban neighborhood. And old Mrs. Bohacek is driving 7 miles an hour down the road towards the rooster. And Trixie's trying to catch the rooster and doesn't see Mrs. Bohacek in her car going super slow. And so Chris runs out into the street and is like, Trixie, come on, we got to get away from. And Mrs. Bohacek speeds up, and nobody was ever in danger. But Chris rescues her and the chicken, and it's very heart thumping and pounding and lots of fun. And it's danger that could never actually hurt anybody. Yeah. And I do something similar to that at the beginning of every single one of the Kingman books.
Wow.
That's brilliant.
Super fun.
And then that gives the reader fulfillment and the expectation of this meet cute that's going to happen.
Yes.
And
it
starts
does.
off.
So right now, exactly, they're anticipating, okay, what kind of pet are they going to have? You can tell usually from the title, but how is it going to have to be rescued? Or what's going to happen that's going to open this book with this rescue scene? Yeah. So and I have to get more and more creative in each of them.
I bet you do.
And the scenes
how many books are you up to now?
I just published book number 4.5 in the series. I did a Christmas novella with some side characters, but that one was a goose who has escaped the pen to be slaughtered at an Oktoberfest. And so they're running through the Oktoberfest tent, chasing the rescue goose named Sir Hunks-a-Lot.
As you would.
As you would.
The other thing I like about these rescue things, and I is like, so for example, in The Cock Down the Block, it shows you the kind of guy that he is. Like, he's out there rescuing this girl, and he's talking about it like, oh, she's amazing. So he falls first. There's these kind of tropes that you've got going on there that kind of are part of that. And as you're reading it, you're kind of going, oh, this is this is the book that I'm in for. This is this guy, and he's obviously heroic and strong, and he's totally in love with this woman. Like you just all of that is in that. So it makes it a really delicious scene, so it's not just the danger that can't hurt you. There's a lot more going on there, I think. Yeah.
And I think a lot of danger scenes can absolutely have all of that kind of subtext, whatever you're trying to get in there, especially if it's like a rescue scene. But even the other kinds of danger scenes, you can put so much subtext in a danger scene because hearts are already pounding. They're already excited. So of course they're also already aroused, which is the fun of danger scenes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right.
How big are your books? Sorry, how big are the books? Your ones normally?
These are 85,000 words, so they're 350-ish pages.
Yeah.
So full length rom-coms.
Yeah.
And then the final category is touch or grooming. Those kind of go together. And the best example that Jennifer gave us was, again, in Hunger Games. The very opening scene is Katniss brushing her little sister's hair. And there's no dialogue. We don't have to hear that Katniss loves her sister. We can see it in that moment of grooming between them. And I think that, again, with the makeover scene, a lot of times you can get grooming into a makeover scene. But I think this is why, have you read the scene where the hero washes the heroine's hair? I love those. I love those. And it's because it's a touch and grooming scene. So in my books, I wanted to make sure that not just in like sexy times did we fit in touch and grooming, but other parts too. And that was why I decided every book had to have a fun and funny pet, because we cuddle our pets. And that is touch and grooming right in and of itself. So I can work it into the world, not just an individual scene. So those are the 7 categories. There's a lot of other stuff that she talks about in her talks, and I can't recommend them highly enough. Like, you absolutely have to go listen to the 2 from RWA, which I think these days they're not available on their website anymore. So maybe you just have to find a friend who has them. And they can maybe share them with you. Because she does another one called Writing for Your Id, which is where you decide all the things that you think are fun, that you love when you're reading or in your life, and you put those into your books. If you can fit them into these categories, even better. But she also talks about, in her Psychology of Fiction one, she also talks about some other things that I think can be really fun for us, including things like gossip. We love to gossip, but we also, as readers, love to gossip about our characters. And so we're talking about, oh my God, did you see when so-and-so did this, or Chris and Trixie did this? But you can also work those into plots too. In the first book, I ended up with a sex scandal, even though this is a light and fluffy rom-com, and that was a lot of fun because it was very gossipy. And things like moral taboos can be fun in books as well, but you can still do them in rom-coms.
There's all these things we know that are kind of things that we like to read about ourselves. And so we just, the other thing she mentioned, and I'd be curious about your take on this, is the idea that when we first start out, we write the book of our heart and we just write whatever. And then we get more experienced and we think, oh, I can't do the purple prose and I have to rein in those crazy, the cliches. I can't do the cliches anymore. I can't do all those things. And she says, let it all loose.
Let it all loose. I do agree with her, and partially, like, I feel like I've always agreed with her, but the Cock Down the Block proved that to me even more, because I didn't know that it was going to do what it did. Like, we don't know what we don't know. I didn't know it was going to go bananas like it did. A huge part of this was writing everything that I wish that I had ever written in a romance novel. I didn't hold anything back. I did all of the things that I thought were super fun, that I love. But with an eye towards the market as well at the same time, knowing that things that readers would also love. And that I have found, the more that I lean into my most true, authentic self, which is what we're doing when we're writing for the id, the more successful I am.
Isn't that interesting?
So to an extent, I think we do get these internal editors of what the world tells us we're supposed to do. The more true you are to who you are, I think you got a better shot at being successful.
And obviously you had no pushback with the title, especially of book 1.
Right. Well, a little bit, to be honest, a little bit. When I launched the book, Amazon, you can't type in the Cock Down the Block on Amazon. You can now, but you couldn't the first few weeks. A lot of really weird stuff showed up in your Amazon search if you typed in the Cock Down the Block. A lot of really weird stuff. My favorite of which was a woman wearing a rooster mask. I don't know. So I did actually, I was worried about that. But one of my most successful TikToks was me going, uh-oh, Daddy Bezos thinks I'm too naughty. You can't actually find my book if you search the title. Go search my name. And that TikTok went semi-viral and helped me sell a lot of books because people are like, oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Must be a reason why it's banned.
Right. Must be a reason why it's banned. Everybody wants banned. So very kind of gossipy in and of itself. But I also knew, I worried when I put it up there because it's got an asterisk in it. Which also makes searching harder because asterisks can be anything. but I knew I wanted to go a little bit crazy balls with the titles. And that is because of another talk that I went to at RAM by Whitney G. She did this talk the very first year, so 2018, I want to say. And she did a talk about packaging. And so this was the other part of the intentionality of this series. So I built in a lot of intentionality into building the world and what I was going to write. But we know that the writing is only part of it. That doesn't necessarily sell the book. The marketing does. And Whitney's premise at her talk was that your packaging is the most important part of your marketing. Set that up right from the get-go, and it's already built in. It's a lot easier to market a book that's really well packaged. So she gave us 4 parts of packaging, and she said at the talk they were in this particular order, like number 1 and most important, number 4 the least important, but all still super important. And her premise was, if your packaging at each of these stages doesn't make you and the readers literally gasp, like, oh, it's not good enough. So her packaging, her 4 parts of packaging were number 1, title. So I went crazy balls with the title because I knew it would get a lot of attention. And I've continued that throughout the series. Amazon does not let me advertise those books. I cannot put those books on AMS advertising because they're too cheeky for Daddy Bezos. But it's been worth it. So number 1, title. Number 2, cover. This is the most I ever spent on the cover in my whole entire life. And it was like, oh my God, that's so much money. But it literally paid itself in the first day of sales because the cover is so very, very, very eye-catching and very much. I give a lot of credit to my artist. Her name is Lenny Kaufman, for creating such beautiful art that is so very to market, but also very eye-catching at the same time. Enough that I got it tattooed on my arm.
Oh wow!
That's upside down. I'm sorry, I can't show you right side up. But I love this art so much that I got it tattooed. So if your art doesn't make you want to get a tattoo of your art, it's not good enough.
That's not good enough.
Yeah.
Right. Number 3 is our book description, and we all know our book descriptions are really important. And so I worked a lot on it, workshopped it with my other writer friends and things like that. And I'm fairly good at book descriptions anyway. And that is just a natural talent. So I would say if you're not, pay somebody to help you get a good one. And then number 4 of packaging is the first 10% of the story. And that's because Amazon's look inside. People can literally look inside and read those first couple of pages and see, oh, is this a story that I actually want to read or not? Or at the bookstore, you've seen it. You've done it, where you open the book and you look at the first page. So those are her 4 parts of packaging. And so I was very intentional about making sure that those were beyond expectations. And I think that it also helped a lot of why this book in this series is successful.
Wow.
So that's awesome. I love that.
That's very good advice.
Yeah. Do you know, even I look at your cover and I just, even the fact that it's an outline of a rooster instead of the O. It's just little details like that just
that was Lenny's idea.
I think it's brilliant. So that's all worth it. I love it.
Wow.
And I always think the first 10% of the story, the look inside, we kind of talked about that before, but I actually think that's an undervalued tool for us, that we should be really thinking about that first scene and making sure that it's got a bit of something to it.
Sure.
A bit of something to it, but also make it one of the universal pleasures. Use these as your opening scene, because already you're snagging somebody with something that we all love, which is why Danger That Can't Actually Hurt You is my opening scene in all my books.
That's awesome.
It really is.
So have there been things that have been challenging through this process? Like, what were some of those kinds of things?
For anybody who did go to RAM and heard Melanie Harlow's talk, her talk was about 7 things that she learned from being a 7-figure author. And it hit me right in the heart, because everything that she was talking about has been happening to me for this last year, because this series did go so bananas successful so quickly, that I was already a full-time author, but I had to do all kinds of, I'll say, more money, more problems. I had to do so many new things that were new to me, because I'd never had a book in the top 100 before. And now I have 4 that had hit the top 100. And so I had a lot of systems I had to set up. I wasn't ready. And I don't think anyone can really be ready. Like, everybody can say, make sure you set up your finances. And nobody's ready. Nobody's ready for something to go successful like that. And so I've learned some hard lessons along the way of things that I wish more people talked about. And I think, because I don't remember anybody talking about any of these kinds of things to me, and I'm super deep into the author world. I am in all of the Facebook groups all the time, and I go to the conferences, and I don't remember anyone talking about the biggest lesson that I had to learn along the way was who you have in your circles of authors, and not just people to cross promo with, because at this level, everybody would like to cross promo with you. It's who is there, who is your support system? Because I will say, I honestly have lost friends along the way. There are people who don't talk to me anymore. And I think it's because, I mean, I don't really know. I think some of it is, problems with someone else getting success where you haven't. But, and I get it. Author world, it can be super, super competitive. But I am not a different person just because I make more money and have had a book in the top 100. But people perceive that. So if you ever get super successful, be prepared to shore up your support systems with the people around you. Because a lot of more people want your time, and people who you used to spend time with might not want to spend time with you anymore. And I wish that I had an inkling of that before all of this happened.
Because I dare say that when you do get successful, and you are quite prolific, really, with how many books you put out a year, that time is valuable. And maybe people perceive it that you aren't readily available for them like you used to be. But that's actually a fact that you can't be, can you? You can't, sort of chat for a couple of hours on the deadline.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I think in author world, all of us, not all of us, a lot of us are on deadlines all of the time. Just because I have deadlines doesn't mean everybody else doesn't have deadlines. It's just made me appreciate the author friends that I have who really do say, when they say, I'm so excited for you, actually mean it. So hold those friends close. That's what my biggest takeaway from being a super successful author is. I mean, there's lots of other things, and that's just the business, right? I think that, like I get contacted by, I don't know, agents and editors and people who want me to be in book boxes and things all of the time. And you have to decide business wise, are these things that I actually need to be doing or not? Or because it's exciting when everybody's like, please be in my book box. I don't have time to be in your book box. But the people aspect of it, I think, is the most important thing.
Amazing.
That's good to know.
They say, be careful what you wish for, right? With success, it's the truth, isn't it?
And you can't put a price on good friends.
No, you really, really can't. And I have had to sort of rebuild my support network through this. And I'm so grateful for the people that have stuck with me throughout it. But I also have so many more new friends that I hadn't expected to have before, that are, I'm looking for genuine, authentic friendships with people. That it doesn't always have to be like, just because I'm a high earner author doesn't mean my friends all have to be high earner authors. I'm happy to talk to and be friends with anybody anywhere in the process. And I think I would like to see more of that in author world.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. We're in this together, right?
Yeah.
Can I just touch back on a little bit of marketing with you? So if you can't advertise those books on Amazon, where do you advertise them?
So this was part of the talk that I gave at at RAM is I didn't spend a lot of money on advertising of this book. The first book in the series, Cock Down the Block, when it hit number 23 or 24 in the store. I spent $1,000 on Facebook ads, and that was it. For not that day, for the month.
Yeah.
I spent $1,000 on Facebook ads. And that is in part due to a lot of different things. In my talk, I broke it down by 4 different categories of successful. They're called success pillars. So like, how hard did I work? I worked pretty hard to come up with this series and the writing and do all of the pre-work that I needed to do. But then also another one in a success pillar is timing. So I knew that it was a really good time to launch a book in the fall in the States, because moms have a little bit more free time because their kids are back to school. So it's generally a pretty good time to launch a romance novel. But also the fall is American football season. And so why don't I launch an American football book during American football season? So timing. And then I can, for the most part, I can control how hard I work. I can control some of the timing, but there was also some other timing that I got a little bit lucky with. Taylor Swift started dating a football player right when my book came out. And I was like, ooh, and everybody was asking for football recs. Here you go. I got one. That was just lucky timing, and I had nothing to do with that one. And then there's also hard work, timing. Oh, to an extent, you can only control part of your skill and your talent, like a little bit. It's what your God-given skill or talent is, but you can, like, take craft classes and things like that, so you can improve. And experience, like you can't control how much experience you have, so utilize what you have and keep continuing to get more. So those 3 success pillars I think are really important, but the one that I think almost everybody attributes success to is the one that we have no control over whatsoever. And part of why I wanted to do the talk that I did at RAM about these success pillars is because this one is really only a part of it, but everybody thinks it's the most important part of it. And I'm here to say that it's not. All of them have to be combined. And that one's luck. I did get a little bit lucky with TikTok specifically, but also with Instagram Reels for advertising this first book. It was doing well in the store on its own before those TikToks hit, but I had 2 pretty viral TikToks. Neither of them were 1 million, but close to 1 million views. And then a few smaller ones that were like around 100,000 views. That absolutely helped. But then one of the TikToks, and for the love of all that is happy, put your TikToks on your Instagram Reels if you're not, because I had an Instagram Reel that hit 4 million views. And that really catapulted the book, and it kept it up there because they just kept showing it. And so that kept the book in the top 100 for almost a month. So that was super, super lucky.
But also, I feel the need to, because everyone talks about luck and but you set it up right, and you had the awesome the settings and scenes, you had the hooks, you had all the stuff that makes you successful on TikTok and Insta that people are looking for. So in some ways, I don't consider that luck. I consider that craft and planning on your part.
Well, I mean, and the rest of the series speaks to exactly that, because all the rest of the books in the series have hit the top 100. None of the rest of the books in the series. I've never had a viral TikTok since. I've had a few good ones, but I've never had one I've never had one on my account that is over 100,000 since, I don't think ever. I think I have one that's over 100,000 views on TikTok. None of the rest of the books have had viral TikToks or viral Reels. I didn't get the luck on the other books, but they all still hit the top 100. So while luck is one of the pillars, like, you can get successful with just luck. But you're more set up for success the more of those pillars that you have. The more you can control how hard you work, you have a little bit of control over the timing, you have some control over your skill, and you got no control over the luck. So the more of those pillars that you have, the better chance you've got at being successful. Luck is just a part of it, and it's not for all of them. I have not been lucky since. But I've been
Glad
real
you have.
lucky.
This is true.
It's a definition of luck that would say that
Yes,
yes, you have been quite,
Mm.
Yeah.
that everything is
Amazing.
working.
So to answer your question, if we go all the way back, Wendy, to answer the real question is, I do the majority of my advertising on Facebook because Amazon doesn't let me. And then obviously I do TikToks and Instagram. Bookstagram was a lot more important than I ever expected it to be. Paranormal romance does not do, for the most part, doesn't do like cover reveals and bookstagram tours. But when I hired the PR girl that I work with for Amy, she's like, oh yeah, we have to do all of these things, and she does all these things on my Instagram, which I had never really done for my Aidy books before. And the Instagram community has definitely helped spread the word about these books, and I am grateful and lucky to have been blessed with a lot of Instagram people really like this series.
So that's influencer kind of thing, or is that
influencer kind of things, but like I don't like pay influencers. Like I don't reach out to particular influencers. The way that we do it is on Instagram we put up a call for ARCs, and then when you fill out that, we ask if you have social media, and can you post about your ARCs on social media, and they do. So, and not all of the bookstagrammers that are excited about my stuff have great big followings. And that's okay. I'm happy for anybody who has 1 follower or somebody who has 1 million followers to get excited about the books.
Yeah. It's still up there, still creating the word. Yeah, exactly. So was there anything else that you did? Anything that you think would be helpful for our listeners?
I think one of the things that we also gets bandied about in a specifically self-publishing world is that you have to do rapid release if you want to be successful. The series was not. So I think the first book came out in September, and I had intended on rapid releasing, but because the series went bananas, I honestly did not have the time to write the next book because I had so many other things on my plate with all of the other stuff that I had to do now. So I had thought the next book would, my intention was 1 book a month. And I'm a pretty fast writer, so I knew that I could do that. I just didn't have the time anymore. So I ended up pushing the next book to February. So I went from September to February in between releases. And then I did February to June, and then June to September. That took me the year. I did 4 books. That's not, it's more rapid than traditional, but that's not rapid release. And so I think part of what I want to say that I think will maybe be useful for the readers is beware of all of the advice that is floating out around there of this is the only way to be successful, or this is the best way to be successful. There's a lot of ways to be successful, and you have to find the one that, for me, is the most authentic to you. What is going to work the best for you? The more you lean into your most authentic self, and with some knowledge of the market, I think the more successful that you can be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of all those things, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you be successful with rapid release? Absolutely. Aidy has done it a couple of times, and those were very successful. But this was not rapid release. Like I get scared sometimes how long I have in between releases because I've never done it like this before, and it's working out just fine.
It's working out really more than fine. Right.
So awesome. Are you doing pre-orders on those? Because I'm thinking that was actually a long time.
Cocktail on the Block, I put the pre-order up a year in advance. So I knew I wanted to do it. And I had thought I would do all of these things during that year of pre-order. Like I would build my newsletter, and I would get on Instagram, and I would contact influencers, and I would do all of these things. And that's just not how life works out. I had not started my newsletter before I published the book. Like I had it, but I hadn't done any builders or done anything. And in a year, my newsletter is 30,000 people.
Wow.
Because of the popularity of the book.
Yes.
So I put a bonus epilogue. It's more of a bonus chapter. So I don't necessarily always do, like, I think I think readers want that actual epilogue at the end of their romance novels to see those people living in their happy ever after. So to me, that's just another chapter. And then I write an extra thing. So you don't have to sign up to get the end of the story. You sign up to spend more time with the characters. So like for the first book, I had a scene where I said that they did some naughty things over the phone, but I didn't actually show that. So, and that was like, I don't know, midway through the book somewhere. So my bonus chapter was I gave them that scene. And that is what exploded the newsletter, because people wanted to spend more time with the characters. So I didn't do all the things that I said I would do during that pre-order year. I definitely put up pre-orders for the next book when I'm releasing the previous one, so that when readers get to the end, they pre-order, because I think that's the perfect time to capture them when they're very excited about the book that they just finished and they want more in that world. So I always do that.
So knowing that you weren't going to be able to get this book up in the month that you had previously thought you would, did you then put the pre-order up for like a year out and then bring it forward, or how did you work that?
I do know people that do that. I need a deadline to be able to finish my books. So if I put it out for a year, I wouldn't finish it for a year.
Right.
So I had kind of thought that I would do that with the very first book. I put it out for a year and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll publish it in February around the Super Bowl. No, I didn't publish it until that year, because I need that deadline to tell me when to write the book. So I put the book up for when I think I'm going to publish it. Amazon gives us that little bit of wiggle room that we can move it by 30 days. And maybe I've been in and out of pre-order jail a couple of times because of that.
That's good to know, though. It's good to know.
Right. I mean, if you cry COVID, maybe they let you out right away.
Good to know. Good to know,
though. But I do have friends who do that, who will put it out to very far, and then when it's ready, they'll pull it back and publish it then, like surprise. But that is not how my brain works.
Awesome. Wow.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing.
It's so much.
So much information.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, okay, one little piece of a golden nugget piece of advice for our listeners, just to end, something that you have learned along the way.
I think the nugget is be intentional about being your most authentic self in your book, but with an eye to the market. Be you, but with an eye to what readers actually want to read. Not everybody can do that, and that's okay. But I think the majority of authors can do that. And sometimes we don't do one or the other. We either are intentional about the market, but not necessarily authentic to ourselves, or we're only authentic to ourselves and not thinking about the market. And I mean, not everybody, but the majority of us can do that. So if we can be intentional about it, I think we have a better shot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At getting our books out to readers.
I just like the idea of being intentional.
Yeah.
The intentionality of it all. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast
You're so
with us
welcome.
today. That was fantastic. So if someone wants to come and find you, buy one of your books, ask more questions.
So if you like paranormal romance, go to aidyaward.com. If you like contemporary rom-coms with cinnamon roll football heroes, go to author.amyaward.com. I do have an online bookstore for paperbacks, and like my schedule for like where I'll be signing and those kinds of things are on my website, or come find me on social media. I'm on most of them because I actually like social media. So I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on the new Blue Sky. I don't even know what it is yet, but I'm on it. So wherever there's social media, I'm probably on it. So you can come find me at any of those. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group. I'm everywhere.
Awesome.
So come find me, or go to my website.
Thank you so much for that. And I don't know who to pick out of you two. Who knows
Either
where we can be found?
Just www.spagirlspodcast.com. Find us on socials. Find us on pretty much everywhere, right?
And Patreon.
Patreon too. I was trying to think of that word.
What about Patreon? I'm on there too. I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
We're all everywhere.
Come and see us. Come and join our Facebook group.
And
we love you all. How's that?
Yes, lovely.
Thank you, Wendy. Good work.
Okay, cool. All over.
And thank you to everyone who's listened to this episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We're so grateful that you've all been here to join us, and we will be back again next week with another episode. But for now, farewell.
Keep well. Bye.
Bye.